Okay, we're recording. Hello, welcome to Community Library Mississippi Goes Virtual, and we have I think somebody's trying to. The name of this presentation is Art of Manuscript Writing, presented by Richard Hurst, and he is the author of two books. He's in Hollywood, California. The first book, uh, My Brother Bo, Addicted in Paradise. And the other one is 40 Years of Crazy Friendship, which was converted into a play and it has been performed in his local community. And he is actually a former teacher and the former athletic director of a high school in Southern California. And without further ado, I present to you Richard Hurst.
Okay, hello. I'm actually living now in Oxnard, California, down near the beach, which is a nice place to be, especially with the heat we've had in Southern California and other parts of the state. But anyway, I wanted to start off with a story about my father because he was a journalist for 35 years. And if anybody wrote manuscripts, he wrote a lot of them over the years, including a book, which I'm going to touch on as well. My dad was a little boy, lived in the San Fernando Valley, and when he was a little boy, he liked to write short stories, which he did a lot of. And then finally, when he got into his later years in high school, he decided school wasn't the thing for him, and he ended up going to the beach every day. And the lady who became his wife, my mom, was the one that took role in head and homeroom, and she would mark him here when he'd be down at the beach at Santa Monica. And my dad continued to do that for a couple of years before he decided that maybe he needed to get his GED. And he took the test and he got his GED, and he was a graduate of a high school via that method. Then he decided that he wanted to get a job, which he did, banging fenders. And he was banging fenders one day at Jack's Auto Body, and a man came in, a friend of his, and said, you know, Jerry, I'm going to go to LA City College and I'm going to become a newspaper reporter. My dad said, oh, that's really a nice, objective that you have. Good luck. My dad went home and he thought about it and he thought, well, heck, I used to write when I was a kid, so maybe I should pursue that particular goal. And my dad ended up going to LA City College for 2 years and got a degree in journalism. And then he came out of the school and continued to pound fenders and write stories on his own. Eventually, my dad started submitting articles to the then Valley Times, which is a small newspaper in the San Fernando Valley. And he got rejection after rejection after rejection from the managing editor, a man named Berger. Then finally, my dad kept giving him so many articles that he decided to publish a couple. And my dad was eventually actually hired by that newspaper, and he worked there for 5 years. During the time my dad was a newspaper writer for the Valley Times, he met a guy that ferried airplanes for a company called Fleetways. And the guy said to my dad, his name was Jack Ford, he says to my dad, he says, Jerry, why don't you come all around the world with me as I ferry these airplanes, and maybe you can write some stories about the places we go to. And so my dad said, well, I got to ask my editor. The editor said, go for it. And my dad was on a plane with this guy flying over the Pacific towards the island known as Wake Island out in the Pacific Ocean. And from Wake, they ended up going over into India, and then from India to China. And then from China, they finally went up in Baghdad, Iraq. And then finally, they had hit Europe. And along the way, my dad wrote articles and sent them back by snail mail to the Times, Valley Times, and they published his articles. My dad arrived back, the guy says, Jerry, I'm going to go again. You know, you want to come with me for a second trip around the world? And my dad says, well, you know, I'd like to, but I got a wife and kids, and I think I better stay here because my wife might not be happy if I leave for a second time. And Jack got in his plane, headed out towards Wake Island, and landed there, ready to pick up the next plane. And lo and behold, he got on another plane to ferry to another island in the Pacific, and he got about 5 miles off Wake Island, and the plane exploded and killed Jack Forward. So my dad refusing to go the second time saved his life, basically. Anyway, my dad was a young guy. He read Treasure Island, and he also read Robinson Crusoe, and he got this travel bug when he, from this trip that he took around the world, and he decided he wanted to write an article about it, which he did, and it appeared in the Saturday Evening Post. And one of the things I wanted to emphasize is the fact that when my dad wrote this article, he was so much wanted to have it published in the Post that he wrote it. He rewrote it 7 times before they finally accepted the manuscript and then published it in the newspaper. So anyway, my dad continues to write for the LA Times for a few more years before he landed a position at the LA Times. And at the LA Times, he was a general assignment reporter, and he did all sorts of things, including being on the police beat for quite a few years before he ended up becoming the travel editor of the LA Times. And then for 30 years, he was a travel editor, and he traveled the world doing what he liked best, which is writing and traveling. Anyway, my point that I'm trying to make is that my dad had a lot of experiences in writing newspaper articles, and he also wrote stories for magazines, etc. And he was a very meticulous person. And I remember when I was a kid, I'd walk through the house if he was home doing writing, and he would make me basically walk on eggshells because I could see when I looked at him, he wasn't happy that I was in the room if he was thinking about what he wanted to write down on a piece of paper. Anyway, eventually my dad, after all of his travels and all that kind of thing, got in a situation where my mom became ill. And when my mom became ill, the doctor said, she has to have an operation. And because of her need for an operation, we need to know her medical history. And my dad said to the doctor, and my mom was in the room, says, well, we don't know anything about her medical history because she was adopted. And the doctor says, well, if you don't know what's going on with your mom's medical history, she could possibly die because we need to operate on her. If we don't do it properly, she could, not be around. So anyway, what happened, my dad went back east to Indiana where my mom had been born and adopted. And he found a judge who was kind enough to help my dad find my mom's real mom, and her real father had died years before. They never got married. And my dad came back and he told the doctor, Harry, I know what's my mom's history. Here it is. My mom had an operation, and she ended up living another 20 years. Well, my dad thought, hey, I've got a good story here. I think maybe I'll write it. And it's about adoptions and things like that. And that time, people couldn't know too much about adoption, if they're adopted or not, as far as who adopted them, because of the laws. And my dad wrote this book, which was eventually published. As I was telling Gigi, they eventually made it into a movie, which they had on TV. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is my dad was, a prolific writer, and it's because of him that he continued to work at the LA Times and garner different rewards for his efforts. And he liked France in particular. When he would go to France, he'd write about Paris, and he loved, the east bank of the Seine River. That's where he would stand, the east bank. And eventually, the people in France got wind of my dad's writings, and he actually received the Legion of Honor for his efforts as a writer. And I have a facsimile of the award that he received right here. And this is just a bigger copy of the Legion of Honor, which he did receive. And they had a big celebration at the house of the house of the person who was an envoy here in Los Angeles, and they gave him his award. But anyway, I thought his story was a little bit more interesting than me talking about my writing, to at least to begin with. Now, I'm supposed to tell you about.
Yeah, because you ain't said.
Go ahead. Question? Okay, I'm supposed to talk to you a little bit about the art of manuscript writing, and what I did was I thought about it for a while, and I thought, well, I can best tell you by just writing down some things on a piece of paper and let you know a little bit about the mechanics of manuscript writing. And the beauty of it is I can read from the back what you're reading in the front here. And I'm just going to cite some of the mechanics of manuscript writing, which Meredith suggested I share. Basically, a manuscript is a right that you want to have published. And when I hooked up with Meredith, because I wrote a book that she published, I did follow the rules and all that kind of things that she gave to me to follow. And I'm not very good technically when it comes to this type of stuff, but I should share with you that's valuable. Manuscripts that are novels are about 35 to 40,000 words. And your average nonfiction book is usually about 50,000 words. So that's just one of the ideas about manuscript writing I wanted to share initially. When you do a manuscript or type it, it should be typed double-spaced, black print and 12 font, Times New Roman print. And it's computer generated most of the times, although you can send in a snail mail copy on regular paper. Text usually when you're doing a manuscript should be full flush left and ragged right. 1-inch margins, top, bottom, and the sides is what it should be as well. Okay. No extra space between paragraphs, only one space between sentences, indent the paragraph 1/2 inch. Those are some of the other rules as well. And then I'm going to finish up with saying that each page of the manuscript should have numbers on it, author's surname on it, reference of the book's title in all caps on each page that you do in your manuscript itself. Okay, when I was writing my first book, which I'll talk to you about in a minute, I actually wrote it and published it through iUniverse, which is a self-publishing company. And they gave me, when I wrote the book, they gave me some instructions, which I have in my hand here, as to what I needed to do to complete the process of getting my book published. And specifically, it says basic manuscript preparation, and they have about 6 different items in here that you have to be aware of that you need to check off with them, and then how you also actually format. So when I did work with iUniverse, they gave me this sheet, which I used to check off different things I had to do. I wrote a few little notes about outlining, and outlining is not something I really get involved in that much as a writer myself. Usually what I do is I brainstorm and write down a bunch of ideas, and then I try and separate the ideas in different categories. That's what I did with regard to the book that I wrote about a friend of mine, 40 Crazy Years of Friendship. And even when I wrote a book about my brother, I did the same thing. I just wrote down, I brainstormed what I did, and took notes and categorized them as what I did. So, I could do formal outlining, and I've got a copy of a formal outline in here that I can flash on the screen. But mainly I took notes. This is the stuff that I had. I took down notes. In fact, I have one sheet here where I just wrote down ideas about what I wanted to write. And there are probably about 100 different ideas that I just jotted down, maybe a name or a date or a location or something like that to help me along. This is a more formal outline form. You can see here, this is for a book about, it's for a novel is what it is. And it's about 2 people and their relationship with one another. It talks about their likes and dislikes for one another. It talks about how they met and then they end up getting together later on. And I can't remember if they get married or not, but this is an example of an outline that's a little bit more formal. But outlining, I guess, is up to the individual when it really comes down to it. Okay, what I'd like to do is take a look at my books that I wrote. And this is the one that Meredith first showed you, 40 Crazy Years of Friendship. And it's a book that I wrote based on the 40 years that I was friends with a friend of mine who actually died in a condominium fire. And after he died, I felt so lost that I thought, well, what can I do to make myself feel better and to honor this man? And I thought, well, maybe I'll try and write a book about him. And this can act also as kind of a catharsis relative to the loss that I had of my friend. And what I did was I started thinking about the things he did in his life and I did in my life with him that were funny and silly and unusual. And I just started jotting down ideas. And pretty soon I started to think, well, heck, the guy was an athlete. He was an actor. He was a writer because he used to help me write a little bit here and there. He used to edit some of my stuff. And I thought, I think I got a book. And I kept writing and writing and writing. I thought I was a great writer and all that. And I decided, well, I've got to put this into print. And I thought, I don't know how to do it. And I saw an ad on TV and it said, you can go and self-publish a book. So I researched self-publishing and I found a group called iUniverse and I sent my manuscript to them and they sent me a note back and says, well, if you want us to publish a book, you're going to have to write a better book. And I felt really lousy. And what happened is they sent me what their criticisms were via email. And, they emailed me what I needed to do in order to write a better book. And they said, you give us $1,000 and we'll help you. And I was shocked because I thought I'd written a good book. And I suddenly realized, well, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. So anyway, they sent me the editorials ideas and I followed them the best that I could. And eventually, after a long process of them editing and me editing, I published this book. And I'm proud of the fact that I published the book and it helped me, start to understand a little bit more what the publishing business is all about and how you get a manuscript, finally in book form. If you look at the top of the front of this book, by the way, this is a stock photo that they sent me many photos, to choose from. And this is a stock photo that I decided but might be attractive to the reader. And it's supposed to be a picture of me sitting, in a chair with a computer in front of me down at the beach. And I'm supposed to be thinking about what I wanted to write about in this book. And anyway, when I did get this book finally published, its interior is pretty simple. Just has a title page and table of contents, the text, and then at the end of it, I have an epilogue that kind of summarizes what I've tried to do with the book. On the back of the book, it just has basically a summary of the book's about, and then a little autobiography on the bottom is what it is. But anyway, after I wrote this book, I said to one of my friends, I said, you want to read my book? And he says, yeah, I'll read your book. And I said, after you read the book, maybe you can write a play about it because he's a playwright. And what happened was he read the book and one day he calls me up and says, hey, Richard, he says, I wrote a play about your book. And I go, oh, come on, you're crazy. And he goes, no, he says, I took chapter 4, which is a very sad chapter where you went to your friend's condo after he had passed away with his relatives and gathered up all the different things that were left after the fire. And he says, I took that chapter and added a few other chapter ideas and came up with a play. I said, well, that's really cool. I'd like to, maybe see it, produced. He says, well, that's what I'm going to do. And anyway, it ended up that he produced a play and I got to help him critique the play as we were going along. And the play was eventually presented at a junior high where he was a teacher and eventually ended up being produced and directed at the Hollywood Fringe in Hollywood, California, which is a big deal during the summer. They have this festival. And lo and behold, the play actually won an award for Best Producer, which made my friend and me very, very happy. Anyway, this is the first book that I wrote, and I'm just trying to say is that this was self-published and it cost me some money. And a lot of people that I know today who are writers that I talk to do self-publish. You can go through Amazon and do it, I think, a lot cheaper, but this one was a little bit more expensive. But self-publishing is something that I initially did. The second book that I wrote where is it? Oh, here it is. Is a book that actually Meredith published. And what happened with this book before she published it was I wrote the story. It's about my brother who got involved in drugs in later years and ended up passing away from an overdose of drugs on the island of Kauai. And then I wrote about, stuff previous to that particular tragedy in this book. Anyway, I wrote the book and I sent it out to a lady in Florida who is a agent, literary agent. She says, well, I'll get your book published. And I thought, well, that sounds good to me. And I gave her $200. And every month for about 3 months, she kept sending me lists of publishers that she sent the book to. And when I got these little lists of names of publishers, I thought, well, this is maybe a good idea. Maybe it's going to happen. And 6 months down the line, I got frustrated because there was no action. And anyway, I said to the lady, I said, I'm sorry that what you did for me didn't work. Bye-bye. And I started sending my manuscript out to different publishers myself. And lo and behold, one day I had an email from a lady who happens to be Meredith McGee. And she says, Richard, I think you got a book that we could publish. I think I'm interested in publishing it. I said, well, that's really nice. I'd like to pursue that. And anyway, make a long story short, she told me what she thought I needed to do to make the book better. And I, very, graciously agreed. Yes, what you're going to tell me to do is very, very nice. And I'll follow what you want me to do. And hopefully it'll happen. And anyway, I've got a bunch of papers and things and folders that I have right here. And I was going to go through each paper and folder and talk about this and talk about that. But I'm just going to do it without looking at the folders themselves. In fact, I'm going to talk a little bit about editing. And what happened was I was trying to self-edit this book, and I would send things to Meredith, and she would look at the copy that I sent to her, and she started sending me things back. And when she sent them back to me, she had editorial notes on the sheets that she sent back to me via email. And I would then respond by sending back what I thought was a better page of each page of the manuscript. And then we got to the point where we were getting close to publishing the book. And we decided we were going to go through the book page by page and see what needed to be done to make the book a good final copy. In fact, one day she says, I'm going to call you up on the phone tomorrow. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually go through the book page by page, and we're going to see what we need to do to make it a better product. And for, I think it was 4 hours, I think it was a Sunday or a Saturday or something, she and I talked, and we went through page by page by page and re-edited the book to the point that we finally came down with what we thought would be the final product. Anyway, this book itself, I've got all these papers in here, but let me just take them out of here. This book is a little bit more different than the first book, and that in it I have like a foreword, which kind of gives you an introduction to what the book's about. Got your title page. I have a part where I have a dedication of my brother, who I dedicated the book to. Another part of the book is acknowledgments of people that helped me edit the book besides Meredith. My wife helped me. Another friend of mine helped me edit the book as well. And then there are people that read the book who I know that are friends of mine, and they contributed their critiques, which is included in the book that you can see right here. When I wrote this book, I thought, I'm going to write what I think is important about my brother's life. And as I was writing it, I thought, there are other people that knew my brother that loved my brother just like I did, that might want to share something about him that was positive, or maybe even negative. And I contacted 3 of my brother's friends and I said, hey, I wrote this book about my brother, but I'd like to include what you knew about my brother because you were an important part of his life. And 3 different people that I contacted agreed to write a story about my brother in this book. And actually another person who lived on Kauai wrote a poem about my brother. So besides what I wrote in this book, there are 4 other people who are party to the publication of this book. When I wrote the book, Meredith says to me, she goes, Richard, I think maybe we need some photos of your brother so people can relate to who he is. And this is one of the photos that we have in the book of my brother when he was a young kid in high school. And it says Hollywood there. We didn't really actually live in Hollywood, lived in North Hollywood, but that's still okay because Hollywood and North Hollywood are basically the same area. But anyway, this is a picture of my brother when he was a kid, and she thought it should be included. Also, he was into acting, and it's a picture when he was acting. He was an extra in TV and movies in Hollywood, and that's a photo that I added to help you understand a little bit more about what he did as one of his jobs, which was in that industry. Here's a picture of me and my brother. We were big beach guys when we were going to the beach in the summer, a place called Crystal Cove down near Laguna, California. So I talked a little bit about our summers that we used to spend when we were kids and other summers later when we were adults in the book. And I say, a picture's worth 1,000 words and all that kind of thing, which I think it is. This is my brother's funeral that occurred in Kauai. You can see there's some people there on the beach. And when I wrote about the funeral part, Meredith says, yeah, let's get a couple of pictures of that as well. So that's what we did. When my brother got involved with the drugs and all that kind of thing in Kauai, that's where he died. I went over there to try and help him out before he passed away. And when I got there, I didn't realize that because of his drug habits that he had kind of gone downhill the last year. And when he was living in Kauai, just a picture of his condo. I don't know if you can really see it, but it's a picture of his condo, what his condo looked like. And he actually became a hoarder through his drug usage. And this picture gives you a little bit more of an idea of just how serious his illness was. And anyway, just kind of summarize the book. I ended up going over to Kauai and trying to help my brother. And he was, unconscious and on life support for the last 5 days of his life. And I had to have them pull the plug on him because he wasn't going to live a normal life, is what it amounted to. When it comes to doing research and things like that, for my first book, I didn't do as much research as I did on my brother's book. And I've got a bunch of papers in here that show the different types of things that I got involved in when I did research. And for example, when I got ready to write the book, I ended up asking the people in the hospital to send his medical records to me so I could better know what was going on with him when he was in the hospital in Kauai. And they sent me his records, which are in this box right here. And I went through this whole box of records trying to find out information about my brother's illness that I could include in the book. So this is some of the research materials that I had. I found letters that my brother had written to my dad when he was younger and my mom when he was younger, talking about some of the experiences that he was going through when he was a kid. I've got other things in here as well that I use for research too. Here's a letter he actually wrote to my mom and my dad that I included in the book. And it talked about when he was a younger kid, when he was involved in drugs and alcohol, and he tried to commit suicide. And this is a suicide note, basically. And I included that in the book. This is a letter that I wrote to my daughter when I took over as the person responsible for his estate. She was the executive estate, and she was pregnant at the time when my brother was in trouble. And when I went to Kauai, I thought, I can't have my daughter take care of my brother because she's pregnant in California, and I had her allow me to become executor of his estate. So that's something that I use as a resource. Here's his death certificate. If you want to confirm that somebody's dead, this is a thing that's going to tell you. And it was very sad when I received this from the state of Hawaii. They sent it to me. This guy that gave my brother a knee operation, he's a guy that had a special way of operating on people back in 2010. And he performed the first of a particular type of operation on my brother in Kauai on his knees. And he did both knees, actually. And lo and behold, it's because of this guy that my brother started to take drugs for his knees, because initially when he had his knees operated on, they felt fine. And then after a while, he started getting pain in his knees, and he ended up taking drugs that would help him avoid the pain. And anyway, I've got all sorts of stuff in here that I use for research. I've got bills from Canada where he ordered drugs and things like that. He would order drugs from Canada. He'd order the same drugs from his doctor in Kauai. And he was taking drugs all the time. And anyway, that's basically what his story was sort of about. Last night I was watching TV, and you guys probably saw it too. They had the doctor from for Donald Trump talking about Hipaa laws, and then after that I was watching Joe Biden, and he was talking about Hipaa laws as well. And I thought, well, gosh darn, when I was writing this book, I had to make sure that I followed the Hipaa laws. And the Hipaa laws are basically laws that are protect people from being defamed when you write about them. In other words, when I wrote about my brother, I had to make sure that when I wrote about his medical conditions and all that kind of thing, that I didn't write something that would defame my brother or the doctor that maybe treated him, during his illness. So anyway, last night they're talking about Hipaa laws, and I thought that's kind of ironic. They're talking about what I was going to talk to you a little bit about today.
Richard, we're getting close to your question and answer session. I was just telling you so you could come to a stopping point.
Okay, what you want me to do? I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay. Huh?
Yes, now or later?
No, I'm saying
getting close.
We have about 15 minutes left, so I know that you was gonna save part of it for your question and answer portion. And so whenever you get to a stopping point, we could stop so that in case the audience have any question. There are other people in the audience, you don't see them. But
okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me just kind of summarize a few other things.
Sure.
When you do write, you have to be aware of libel and things like that, and copyright laws. And when it comes to like permission, it says right here, I had to actually have Meredith give me a form letter that I sent to people that wrote those short stories I talked to you about in the book, and they had to sign off giving permission to have those stories put in my book. So that's what this is about. I have different things in here too, my edits and Meredith's edits that I already talked to you about. With my friend's book, I've got the same thing from my universe, and they send you a form letter, and then they give you a printout of what you got to do and all that kind of thing. And anyway, that's something you got to be aware of, is the fact that there are different types of edits that you're going to do, self-editing and then editing based on what the publisher wants you to do. Anyway, I was going to show them to you, but don't have the time. One thing that I recommend that everybody do is join a writing club. After I wrote my first book, I felt that I needed to do something different. And I joined to become a better writer. So I joined a writing club. And the writing club that I joined also has what they call critique groups attached to them. And critique group you go to outside of the writing club meetings. And it's usually 5 or 6 people that write short stories or write books or whatever. And you go in there and maybe you read 7 or 8 pages of your book or your short story to the group, and then they critique you. And usually it's supposed to be constructive criticism, not something that's going to make you feel bad about your efforts. But anyway, I was going to talk a little bit more about that. Anyway, it's something you consider to do is joining a writing group. And I go once a week on Thursdays. We meet for 2.5 hours. And, we talk about anything from, well, I got it right here, from spelling to verb usage to tag or actions with dialogue, grammar and punctuation. What is a paragraph? Where did this paragraph start? Where does the accuracy of information that you write about? Is what you write historically sound? Does your story have a good beginning and an end if you write a story? All that kind of good stuff. We also try to do more of what you call show versus tell. And what showing is maybe you're right there with the person who's eating a sandwich, and you can actually, when you're writing, have the flavor of what they're eating in the sandwich. Instead of say a guy ate a peanut butter sandwich, you might talk about how the strawberry jam tastes in the peanut butter itself and the texture of the bread. If you're going to say something that you want to be interested in when you're writing, say about a person, let's say you say maybe the guy cut himself, instead of saying the guy cut himself, if you want to show the story a little bit better, you might talk about the blood gushing out of the wound and wrapping it up with a Band-Aid and stuff like that. So showing versus telling is something that we talk about in our group all the time, and it's a way that you can learn to become a better writer. And I continually try and become a better writer. I don't know everything. That's the honest truth. There's style guides you can get. Here's a style guide from psychology. It's called American Psychology Association. This is for more technical scientific stuff. Meredith's aware of this one. This is a Chicago Manual style. It'll help you do anything and everything you need to do to put it together, a good manuscript, and get it published. Elements of Style by William Strunk and E.B. White. E.B. White's the guy that wrote Charlotte's Web, and he was a student of Mr. Strunk at Cornell University. And after Mr. Strunk died, he rewrote the book, and this is a very good book. Talks about grammar, talks about style itself. That's why they gave it the name. And this is a good tool too. This is a goodie. This is J.I. Randall's Synonym Finder, and there are 1 million words in this book. So if you don't want to reuse the word cat, it'll give you maybe 50 other words you can use to write the word cat. So this is a good tool too for you to use. Okay. I said, have I missed anything? Now, there are 2 books that that I think you can purchase that'll be helpful to you. And one is the one that I was talking about earlier, was Showing versus Telling. There's a book by a lady named Marcy Kennedy, and it gives you the ins and outs of how to write a better book. And you might want to think about getting this book. And then there's another one that is called Bird by Bird by a lady named Anne Lamott. And Anne Lamott is a teacher of writing. And what she does is she conducts writing classes and tries to encourage people to not get discouraged. Because sometimes when you write and you are critiqued by somebody, you get down on yourself. And she decided to write this book called Bird by Bird, And it's a hilarious book in parts of it. And it tells you just, some of the things you need to know about going about writing. Failure in writing is going to lead you to success. The more you fail sometimes, the better you're going to become as a writer, because you can edit it and all that kind of thing. And the title Bird by Bird, by the way, is based on the fact that she was on vacation with her dad and I think it was her brother. And the son said, I for 3 months, I've had this assignment to write a book about birds. And the dad says, well, if you have this assignment and you haven't done it yet, you better get going. And he says, well, how do I do it? And he says, well, do it by bird. And that's what the boy did. He wrote a story about the birds and got his assignment and all that kind of thing. That's where the title came from. Okay, I'm winded, but I guess I'm ready. Any questions?
Well, I wanted to say that the one thing that impressed me about Bo was that he was sober for over 20 years before he started taking the opioids, and that was his demise. But he,
book, and I also told him the story of my brother's life, basically beyond what I read from the book. And actually, my son-in-law, who's a singer and writer of songs, wrote a song about my brother's book, and sang it at the book launch. I tried to do the best I could to promote the book through various other ways too. I went to the Toluca newspaper in Toluca Lake, California, and it's a newspaper, it's a local newspaper, and I actually bought an ad, is what I did, and had a lady interview me and read the book, and she wrote an article. So I paid some money to have it promoted that way. There's a local newspaper around here where I live too, and I went and talked to the editor one day and gave her a copy of the book, and she says, well, I like your book. I think we could promote it through an article we're going to have about opioids that a guy's going to write. And lo and behold, the guy called me up and says, tell me your story. And I gave him a brief explanation of my brother's story. And they published it along with some other people's stories in the local newspaper dealing with opioids. I also sent the book to President Barack Obama, and I received back a notification that he had received the book, and it was actually a letter from him thanking me for writing the book, because it was at the time when opioids were there's still a crisis as far as the abuse. But anyway, he wrote a letter back to me thanking me for writing the book, and I have it over here someplace with all my other paperwork. I took it upon myself to write an article too for a local local city council magazine, and they published it. And I told them about my brother's book and all that kind of thing, and they published this article, which I have copies of too. But I've got too many papers here to find it right now. Anyway, that's what I did, and I could just spend money beyond what I already done, but I've tried to do my best to promote the book, and Meredith's good at that. She knows how to do that kind of stuff, and that's why she's helped me a little bit here and there too. And I hope that answered your question.
What's the name of the book your dad wrote about adoption?
Where is it? It's called Jody. Just Jody, Jody. She was born Helen Josephine, and but she went by Jody. And my dad, like I said, he wrote this book, and actually, when he wrote the book, it was published in, I think, 7 or 8 different languages, maybe more than that, and it sold worldwide. He was able to take some of the money that he received from the sale of the book and give some of that money to actually my mom's brother, who she did not know about initially. And actually, she had 3 brothers that she learned of through my dad's efforts.
What was the did you learn anything from your dad writing that you took
Did I learn anything from my father how to write?
Right.
Uh, I don't know if I learned that much from my dad as much as I watched him struggle to write. I mean, even as a travel editor and writer of other articles, it didn't come easy to him, but he did have a gift for words. And when he did have an end product, it was, one that he really worked hard to get the best outcome for. I don't think I said this to you, but one of the things that was kind of fun was my dad would, every couple of months at the paper, he would put out a magazine, a travel magazine. And the travel magazine would have articles that were written by celebrities. And Ali McGraw wrote one of the articles about where she vacationed. And I can't remember where it was she wrote about, but I have a letter that is in my dad's papers that I have here, thanking my dad for allowing her to, be published in his magazine. And this is a good one too. Alex Haley, who wrote Roots, was contacted by my dad, and he asked him to write an article about where he vacationed during the summer. And lo and behold, I'm at home one day, and this is before I was married or anything like that. And I was still in college, and Alex Haley knocks on the door, and I open the door, and I said, "Oh my gosh." He said, "Is your dad home?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "To him." And it was his manuscript for the article that he had written for my dad to be put into this this travel magazine that was published, I think, 4 times a year, that type of thing. This is a picture of my dad, by the way, when he was a young reporter. I have a picture of him. Let's see. It's a picture of him when he went around the world with that guy who was ferrying the airplanes. That's my dad and one of the other pilots. Pictures are always good. They help you, write a book. Oh, here's my mom's book. There's a picture of my mom right there. Okay, anyway, anything else, please?
You can unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. And I also, I wanted to tell everyone that this event was sponsored in part by the Mississippi Humanities Council. And also we have a evaluation. You can download it from the chat if you can find it, or I could email it to you and you can fill it out real quick with your email. And also next Tuesday during the lunch hour, we have another presentation, teacher family relations. But I have all 3 of the books. I do have a question. When you were, what do you think was your growing curve between writing your first manuscript and your second manuscript?
What was my growing curve? Well, the first book that I wrote, I thought I had, written a good book initially. And I found out from the publisher, iUniverse, that I really didn't know what I was doing. And they helped me, like I said, edit the book and all that kind of thing. And the product came out better. And I didn't mention this, but actually, when I initially published that book for an extra $1, they told me I could write a second book. And I thought about it, and I thought about it after I'd written the first book. And about 2 years later, I thought, I've got some things I want to add to the story that I wrote about my friend. I called him Baines in the book. And I thought, I'm going to call these people up and see if they're going to back up what they said they're going to do. And for $1, publish another book. And they said, yeah, Richard, go ahead if you want. And I said, well, I'm going to rewrite that first book. And if you can publish it for me, that'd be fine. And so anyway, I ended up writing a second version of that book. And I think it was a lot cleaner and more concise and all that kind of thing. And I actually added a story that my friend had written to that book. And anyway, I learned how to be a better writer when I wrote the second version of the first book. And then when I wrote the book about my brother, I was not still conscious of certain things that you need to be aware of. In fact, you helped me learn that there are certain words when you're doing your writing that are wasted words. In other words, the words like the word "that" really have no significant value when you're writing a story. If you have the word "that" in the story, chances are you can take it out, and it's going to make your story a little less burdensome. They're what they call I can't find out where they are. There are a lot of words that you can eliminate from your writing that'll make your book more interesting. I think I talked to you about, or maybe I didn't talk to you about the fact that today, writing more simple sentences is probably a better objective than trying to write real long, drawn out sentences. When you write your paragraphs, try and write them a little bit shorter than not, because long paragraphs tend to turn people off. In other words, when you're writing, do you write for yourself, write for what you want people to read, or you want people to read just stuff that maybe they don't seem to be interested in? And then again, chapters as well. When I wrote my book, I think Meredith told me that maybe one of the chapters I had in the middle should be up towards the front because it was more timely in telling the story. And I did, learn from her where to change the paragraphs and the chapters in my book to make a better product. And in fact, one of the chapters I have today, if I look at it, and I think Meredith would agree, if I was to take chapter 1 of my book, I might break it into maybe 3 or 4 chapters, because it talks about my brother's youth. And I probably could have, broken it up, made more interesting. But I continue to learn every Thursday. I go to my writing class, and then I come home and I tell my wife, I said, they didn't like my story. And she goes, well, I liked it a lot. And I go, well, these people didn't. And I get myself kind of beat up for a while. And then I go into my room where I am right now, and I look at the story on the screen. I go, yeah. I look at the notes that they gave me, and I rewrite what I think is a better story from their criticisms. So, I'm each day I write, I hopefully learn something. I don't know if that is what you wanted me to say, but that's what I know.
Well, can I add one thing, Richard?
Yeah.
Well, this is what I like to tell people when I get a new manuscript. I like to compare the manuscript writing with the movie. When you see the movie, you see scenes, and you actually see what's going on. And when you're reading, the writer has to tell the reader what's going on. Like you mentioned about the jam in the peanut butter sandwich, or the blood gushing out. You have to make the characters come to life and the story live by allowing the reader to read it and taking them to that particular scene. And I think that that's a good way of looking at it too.
Well, one of the tools that I use, and I don't use it all the time, but I've got this notebook with a bunch of stuff in it. And there are a lot of papers in here dealing with grammar and stuff like that. But one section I have in here deals with body language words. And what it does is it has a bunch of different topics like anger, and it has for anger facial expressions. It also has for anger, what you might do with your arms, that type of thing when you're writing. There's one here about being annoyed. What is a facial expression for annoyance? What is a body language for that? Is there something you might say that, that in a word, speaking word in your dialogue that presents a good example of what you're annoyed about? Let me see. There's stuff about lying in here. What's a facial expression of somebody who lies? Do they have a darting tongue, dilated pupils, that type of thing? Body language, deliberate control of body energy, shoulder shrugs, being overwhelmed, eyes filling with tears, is a facial expression. Shaking all over could be body language. What's the voice? Lashes out at others. So these words that I have on these pages fulfill the needs that the author has to have in order to try and get a better message across in their writing. I hope you understand what I'm talking about there.
I need that book in my that information in my office.
Yeah, well, like I said, I've got all these different words and things like that that you can look up online that professionals tell you to avoid because it bogs down your writing. And there's a guy named Elmer Leonard, I think I mentioned a minute ago, who's a mystery writer. And one of the things that he talks about is not writing about something you don't think people would like to read from your book. In other words, you read it and you kind of yourself don't think maybe it's important, then don't write it. I've got stuff about foreshadowing in here. I got notes about foreshadowing. I've got grammar terms. There are 50 different grammar terms I have in this book. I have information about writing the first, second, third person in this book. Here's a little bit more about mastering showing and telling in this article that I have from that lady, Marcy Kennedy. Words to avoid, words to exclude. Anyway, I've got a lot of stuff that I refer to. Sometimes I forget about it until I make a mistake in my writing class, and then I go back and I look at this notebook and it helps me out.
Hey, Richard, I know we over time, but your writing club, do y'all meet physically or do y'all gather online?
We meet in person. In fact, with this virus thing, we didn't meet for three and a half months. And all of us have been pretty healthy, and we decided that we would meet, and we've been meeting, and we've been successful in having these meetings without anybody getting sick.
Are you bringing your work that you're working on, or just stuff?
I try and write every week something. I'm writing now about my life, you know, who I am and all that kind of thing. And in fact, I was writing a story about when I lived in Australia, because I lived in Australia for 2 years where I taught. And I've been featuring my life with my wife in Australia in my writing, last couple of things that I've written. But I always try and write something. And sometimes I even, you know, go look back at some of the things I wrote when I was a kid. And I've written some stories, you know, when I was a kid, and actually submitted them to you know, publishers and gotten rejections. It's always fun to get something in the mail, but when it's a rejection, you kind of feel a little bit different. But you know, I try and write every day if I can, and that's one of the things that they try and encourage you to do is to write as often as you can, because the more you write and the more you read writing, you know, you can become a better writer. I mean, over time, especially if you follow the rules and critiques and all that kind of thing that people present to you.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a great presentation, very informative, and with a lot of extra life experiences about writing and manuscripts. And we're going to be ending in maybe a minute, but if there's any burning questions or anything, please feel free to ask, or and of course, if you want to make your final comment, Richard, you're definitely welcome.
Okay, I will make my final comment. I was pretty nervous about this whole thing, and I've been worrying about it for about 3 months. And I have all these papers that I showed you and all that, and I was gonna go, you know, folder by folder by folder. And then last night I was sitting and watching TV. In fact, I was watching the Biden thing, and I thought, how can I best maybe present something about writing that would be interesting to people? And that's when I thought of my father and his story about the guy who ended up dying in the air crash off of Wake Island. But anyway, I appreciate you coming today and being party to this presentation. And Meredith's a wonderful person, by the way. If you want to get a person that knows what's going on in the writing world, She can tell you everything you need to know. She wrote a book actually too about her uncle, James Meredith, and I don't know if you know that, the other people know that, but James Meredith was the first Black student to enter the University of Mississippi, male student. And from then on, he did all sorts of things to promote civil rights and the betterment of all of humankind. And her book is, I haven't read it yet, but I will. You know, she's written children's books. You go online on her website or go to Facebook, you can see all the different things she's involved in. And she's promoted several, beyond myself, several new authors, and she continues to do so.
Yeah. Yes, we have 25 titles, and the company is Meredith, etc. That's MEREDITHETC.com. And it's a wrap now. I think we've done about an hour. We were a little late getting started, trying to let people log on. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you can participate in some of our other events. Community Library Mississippi goes virtual, and we're on Facebook. We also you can register through the Eventbrite. Oh, you have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to know, where do we send the evaluation form? How do we send it?
Send the evaluation form to Community Library. I think I emailed you already, the communitylibrary.ms@gmail.com. You should see that.
Okay.
But that's it. Communitylibrary.ms@gmail.com, and Mississippi is spelled out. M I crooked letter crooked.
Okay, perfect. And then the virtual holiday book fest, are people buying and selling books, or is it only, I saw a spelling bee or something on there?
Yes, the spelling bee is actually for elementary students, and it's sponsored by the Delta Book Festival, which is in Greenville, Mississippi. And they actually, on their web page, on Facebook page, give the entire spelling list for first, second, third, fourth, fifth graders. And you can register for that on Eventbrite. All of Community Library Mississippi Goes virtual events are under the header Community Library Mississippi on eventbrite.com. You can also register on Community Library Mississippi's Facebook page. The poetry contest is for all ages. Last year we had some 6-year-old, 7-year-old to get up and spit. And they, one of them dropped the mic, but we give out trophies, and it is going to be virtual this year, and we're going to be selling books virtually. And some of our authors have already registered, and please register, and please tell people this is an intellectual revolution. So we're hitting intellect at every level for children and adults, and we also have a book club where we read together from age 6 to 60 plus, because we have a literacy problem nationally. So we decided to try to do our 2 cents, and we're reaching a lot of young people, particularly in locally and in the state, but also otherwise.
Okay, great. Yeah, I would love to be to see how I can be a part of the selling of the books or buying of the books. So I'll just email you, or you said go on Delta Fest.
Oh, okay. Community Library Mississippi has a Facebook page. Delta Book Festival, Community Library Mississippi, and the Jackson Book Festival is hosting the poetry contest. The Delta Book Festival we merged with them. They're doing the spelling bee, and so it's called the Virtual Holiday Book Festival. These 2 festivals that used to be in person are going virtual. Delta Book Festival, Jackson Book Festival, and we're doing the virtual holiday book festival, which is also on Eventbrite, where you register that. Everything is under Community Library Mississippi, and you can go to our Facebook page as well, or to Eventbrite and type in Community Library Mississippi, and you'll see all of the other events that we have. And also, you can email us at communitylibrary.ms@gmail.com.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for asking. Any other questions or comments?
I'd just like to thank you, Meredith, for helping me out. And one day I got in the mail something that I was very proud of, and it's this award her publishing company gave to me for my book that I wrote, My Brother Bo. You know,
It's
Addicted
well,
to Paradise. And one thing I want to say too is about Meredith too, is she helped me with things that you don't think about. I had suggested calling the book Lost in Paradise initially. And she says, well, Richard, you know, there's a song called Lost in Paradise, and there are a couple other books out there by that name. And even as such a thing like a title, she helped me come up with, made it a better, maybe attractive product. She's very wise. She knows all the ins and outs of that stuff.
oh, thank you so much. And
Welcome.
if you have to get the book, it's clear. Bo lived an incredible life. He really did. I mean, he died with the best of it. Some in Hollywood, names that are still floating around. But you know, his father, this ordinary person who became a New York Times best-selling writer, and Richard, he's doing his thing, and I think the next book is gonna be incredible. Sounds like he's going to all these writing clubs. Another book is popping up. But anyway, it's a wrap. Thank you so much. And please join our other events. Community Library Mississippi goes virtual. Y'all
Thank
have
you
a
very
good
much. Take care.
one. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.